Computer. Yep, it is recording.
All righty, well, welcome everyone to the first Ionic Meetup. So one thing that we wanted to do a little bit differently is be able to let anyone sign up with Meetup. And for now, anyways, for the next couple of months, we'll certainly do it as Zoom calls. But yeah, we wanted to make sure that it was easier for anyone to sign up and rather than having like an invite only and managing the invite. So this was one way to do it. So welcome to the first Meetup. Hopefully many more to come, and hopefully we can get everyone can get a little bit of information out of this. First off, wanted to welcome Corey to the team. He started like a couple weeks ago. You may recognize him from you working on the Shoelace web component library. So welcome, Corey. It's awesome to have him on the team, and we're looking forward to seeing what we can do next. And so right now he's been working on the Ionic docs site refresh, and we'll be going over that a little bit later in the presentation. So again, this is like our first go at the Zoom meetups. We're also going to have one for Capacitor. That one will probably be, mid-January is what we're thinking right now. I don't know about how often we'll be having it. If it'll be once a month, once every 2 months, I think we'll just play it out for a little while here, see how it works out, make sure that they're all useful. But yeah, expect these to be more consistent, and hopefully we can grow them more, and we'll be recording them, having all the notes. And so if you miss the actual call, you can absolutely just view the recording. So feel free to sign up and tell everyone else to sign up too. This is already kind of old news already, I'm sure, but we released Ionic View. So that was a huge undertaking in a sense, but really what was cool about this project was that it was really just building the wrappers and working on the router side of things. So just like with Angular and React, really a majority of our code, majority of our everything we work on is still in Ionic core. And so now we've got the Vue wrappers, that allow us to ship into Vue 3. So we went straight to Vue 3. You may remember we actually had an older version that was in beta for the longest time. And just a quick backstory on that, we wanted to make sure that we put a lot of effort into getting React on first. And so that was the reason why we kind of put Vue on pause to make sure we had a good quality release of React. Since that's been out, this summer, Liam worked on the Vue side of things, got that rolling. And so far, so good. We've been watching the NPM numbers kick up. So it's been great so far. And also, we just recently did a recording with Evan and Eduardo from the core team. So we'll be publishing that pretty soon to talk a little bit more about it. Also, I should say, like, if anyone on the call, feel free to ask any questions along the way. This is pretty informal. I've just got a couple slides here to kind of hit over some bullet points, what I'd like to talk about, but please feel free to chime in at any time if you have any questions. The other big release was Ionicons 5.2. There are just coincidentally exactly 1,300 icons that basically Ben has homegrown and made himself. So those have all been updated. I do not believe that we have Ionic updated to latest with 5.2. But we'll be updating that pretty soon, and there's some accessibility improvements. I think a big thing was the raw SVGs that are actually in the package that are actually exported. In the past, they were difficult to work with because they were hard-coded to be black. Now those SVGs are hard-coded to use current color, the CSS property value current color, so that it will inherit whatever color it is. So now you can actually use the SVGs directly or easier without like the web component wrapper, but just the SVG itself. And also added a lot more to the search. So if you go to ionicons.com and do searches, there should be some improvements there of finding icons of our 1,300 icons. Also, in the last couple of weeks, we've gotten a couple of big releases out. 5.5 had a couple good Vue fixes. And basically over the last few weeks, there's been many accessibility improvements. 5.5.1 was out just before Thanksgiving, and right now we're working on getting out 5.5.2 with a few more Ionic View router fixes and the hardware back button improvements.
Liam, when will the scroll assist fix come?
So I'm working on that right now. I'll actually have a dev build on that thread we've been working on probably later today.
Super.
Yeah, so my plan for that is when it's ready to go, just for context for everyone interested, working on some new scroll assist improvements that should improve the performance, the responsiveness, the reliability of scroll assist. And scroll assist is the little utility that runs when you tap an input and we adjust the ion content so that, you know, the input isn't underneath the keyboard. So when it comes out, it'll probably be as an opt-in feature, just so that it's experimental for now. So right now I'm shooting for 5.6. But again, like we'll have a dev build way before then.
Okay.
Yeah, and just a bit more information about that. I'm excited about these fixes. So one thing that a lot of users don't realize is that when an input is tapped, there's a lot of the native application will scroll things up, in and out of place where it thinks it should go, as if you were on I don't know, something like a form inside of a normal web page, but we're not inside of a normal web page, we're inside of a web app. And so when it would zoom and scroll to a different location, it really messes up the layout of your web app that you're building. And so we've always kind of internally been able to try to handle that to make sure that when the user clicks it, it gracefully scrolls it to the correct location. In doing that, we've had to deal with Android browser from years ago. Many fixes have gone in for both WebKit and Android. That is kind of been a moving target, but a lot of the work that Liam's been doing has really been some great work to make sure that we improve it, kind of to the modern of how browsers are working. Because again, there's been a lot of the browsers themselves have done a lot of bug fixes that should help out. So now what Liam's been doing has been some huge improvements to making sure that scroll assist is happening in a much more performant and I guess robust way.
What do you guys do to test the various versions of Android? I mean, because the simulators, you can't upgrade the system web view.
Well, that is actually a huge challenge. Luckily, of the last couple of years, it's less of a problem because it's the system web view will update. But that's, like you pointed out, that's not the end all, because you still gonna have different versions. So really, it's been a lot of, I guess, just like manual testing of the different versions that we've had to do. It's not nearly as bad as it used to be. I mean, with old Android and being locked in and not updating, self-updating, not even using Chrome, that was the biggest challenge. But today it's a lot easier because a lot of the bug fixes have been in Chrome, and the web views are updating to the more recent versions. But again, it's not a foolproof system at all, and there is a lot of manual testing yet.
I will add to that it is Android 5.0, and then I think 5.1 that can't update its system web view. Anything below 5.0, and then I think 5.1 and then up, it is all self-updating and evergreen. So the window for different Android versions with older versions of Chrome is very small, considering that Android 5 its numbers are slowly starting to dwindle. So as much as older Android is still going to be a thing, I think it's not necessarily like going to be thousands of people. It might be like, I don't know, 50 or so people who might have this issue. It tends to be less of a problem these days.
Right. But what I'm asking is, on the Android Studio simulator, in the simulators, you can't, let's say you're testing with API like 27 or something. The simulators don't let you actually update the system web view.
So starting with, I believe, Android 7, I think 7.0, you should be able to create emulators with, what is it called? The Google Play service. And that'll essentially install Google Play on your emulator. And from there, you can update the web view. So what Mike was mentioning, 5.0, 5.1, 6.0, you're right, those are going to have the old web views that are going to be fixed. But with 7.0 and up, I believe you can create emulators that have auto updating web views.
And that's specifically for Android, the Android SDK and Android Studio.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, I'll take another look.
Cool. And then Mike, do you want to go over this slide quick?
Yeah, sure. So for folks who are working with Angular, Angular 11.0 was released within a few weeks. The framework itself did not need any updates, which is very awesome. So you should be able to update to Angular 11 without any issues. The only thing to note is that in the CLI and the tooling for Angular, there were a few changes which required a new major version for Ionic Angular Toolkit. So if you are upgrading to 11, please make sure that you update to Ionic Angular Toolkit version 3. If you do not need Angular 11 or are not ready to upgrade right now, stay on the older version of Angular Toolkit, anything 2.0 or version 2 or lower. Also worth mentioning is that this includes a lot of bug fixes to Angular core, mostly around the router. So if you see something that was broken in previous releases and it's now fixed within Ionic Angular and there is an open issue, please let us know. We'd like to see if there's any Ionic Angular router bugs that we can say are addressed. React 17 also came out not too long ago. Eli has sent a PR to get the starters up to date, but we have not tested Ionic React proper. So we're probably going to look into that soon. But if there is someone who would like to send a PR for that, we would gladly accept that. So please reach out if you are interested in trying it.
Cool, thanks, Mike. Any questions? And then Liam, would you like to go over the accessibility improvements?
Sure. So one of our other team members, Brandy, who I don't believe is on the call right now, she has been working really, really hard on a lot of accessibility improvements to basically improve how screen readers such as VoiceOver, TalkBack, or NVDA announce certain Ionic components. So the notable ones, and these fixes have shipped in 5.5, 5.5.1. I believe those are the two releases. The notable components are Ion Select, Ion Checkbox, Ion Radio, and Ion Toggle. I won't go through them one by one, but basically screen readers will now read the selected label, which option is selected if it's like a checkbox, whether or not it's checked or unchecked. If it's a radio, it'll also read the position of the radio in a radio group. So if you're on the second radio out of 5, it'll say, radio 2 of 5. So big thanks to Brandy for that. Fixing accessibility issues is not as straightforward as some people might think when working across platforms. The main reason is that the screen reader technologies are kind of inconsistent. So NVDA will give you one readout for, Ion button, and VoiceOver will give you a totally different one. So oftentimes when Brandy was fixing an issue, she'd fix it in VoiceOver, it would end up breaking in NVDA. So it was a lot of going back and forth and cross-checking and making sure things work across platforms. So Brandy spent many hours making sure that the user experience for these components is really, really good when using screen readers.
Yeah, it's big thanks to Brandy for doing a lot of hard work in that. And yeah, it should all be getting shipped fairly. A lot of it's been already put in, and the remaining stuff should be coming out this week or soon. Cool, thanks, Liam.
Speaking of accessibility,
oops,
that fix to WebKit for the tabbing did land.
That's funny you bring that up.
Yeah, I saw your yeah.
Yeah, Liam, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So we've been working pretty closely with the WebKit team. WebKit is the engine that powers Safari and WK WebView, so we were working with that team at Apple. There have been a handful of issues that have been fixed. Most notably, there's some issues that had impacted Ion Menu, that several-year-old accessory bar issue where the next and previous buttons were not working. That has been fixed. That hasn't shipped yet, but the code has been merged into the main main WebKit branch. So it's just a matter of time before that gets into iOS beta or whatever. Yeah, so that tabbing issue, the tabbing crash, that shipped a while ago on iOS, and it just shipped on, I believe, Safari 14 something, whatever shipped with Big Sur, the most recent release. So it's been really, really great working with them. They've been very, very responsive with getting these fixes, well, fixed. And we have a few more in the pipeline, so hoping we can get those addressed soon as well.
Yeah, so thank your local WebKit team member. Cool, any questions? And then surprise, V6. So Ionic V6 is something that we are planning out right now. It's really still in the research and development phase. So we're trying to figure out exactly what is Ionic 6, what do we want to put into it, what do we not want to put into it. There is a list of things that we have deemed as breaking changes that we've have let stack up, you know, in the queue of things we'd like to get into a major release version so that we don't have to make, you know, breaking changes in any other version. So there's a few of those in there, but really, I think the biggest thing is that we're going to be doing a lot of research into trying to use CSS Grid further. And I personally would like to, you know, dig in that more so that we can look into better adjustments for desktop. Right now, Ionic is largely Flexbox based. The entire structure is, and that's just, you know, that's works everywhere right now. So that's why we use it. And CSS Grid, oddly enough, first worked in IE11, but it hasn't been widely available until fairly recently. Now that it's on Safari, and it's great. You know, it's pretty confusing to use at first, but once you see the power of what it can do, I am interested in seeing if we can restructure an app without, you know, trying to make as many minimal breaking changes as possible, but restructure the entire app structure to use a grid so that, again, the media queries can be really, really awesome. And like, as you adjust the size, we can move squares to different locations, things like that. And CSS Grid would allow us to do that. Whereas with Flexbox, we still have to maintain a very specific structure. So I'm excited about that, all in the name of trying to improve our desktop experience, which is also on a big part of what V6 would be. I'm sure it's no surprise to everyone that our date time for desktop needs a lot of improvement. I think that's probably one of our biggest requested features. So that's one that we want to get in for sure, to make sure that, you know, on mobile, you know, Ionic was first a mobile UI library. It works like how datetime would work on mobile, but then you put inside of Chrome or Safari on desktop, it doesn't fit. It doesn't look well. It should be a calendar or something like that. So that's probably one of our biggest features we'd like to get into V6 is to allow that it adjusts depending on what device you're on. And the other desktop stuff we're missing, like tooltip, like how the picker reacts on side of desktop, you know, adding a stepper component, things like that. It's kind of some missing obvious ones that we would like to get into V6. iOS 14 had a couple design updates. We'd like to get those updated. V5 did get a lot of the big iOS updates, but since iOS 14, there's a couple more tweaks that we'd like to put in there too. Shadow parts, we are using shadow parts today, but not at their fullest. So like kind of with V6, we'd like to use them a lot more and basically style based on their state, and using shadow parts further. And I think they are now fully supported, and I think iOS 13.7. So by the time V6 comes out, we'll be in good shape there to use more shadow parts for everything, or for more things. And then also with V6, I'd like to get out the custom elements build, which is one of the stencil output targets. So right now, Ionic is using the default lazy loaded version of stencil. So this is largely for Angular and really all the frameworks that it doesn't pull in the component until it's seen in the DOM. Once it's seen in the DOM, then stencil will lazy load the implementation of that component and start using it. There's a lot of good things about that, but there's also the bad thing about that of there can be some flickers that come in there, or there's unnecessarily, you know, an extra millisecond or tick that happens between those times of lazy loading. A lot of it had to do with the bundling practices from, I guess, 3 years ago, where it was difficult for Webpack to only pull in parts of Ionic that you're using. Well, now with the latest tooling, Webpack rollup, and how Angular builds, you know, everything is much better that we don't have to rely on stencil lazy loading anymore, which makes it sound like we need to refactor everything, which actually isn't the case. With Stencil, we're able to basically just have the exact same Ionic builds or exact same source code and output it in a different way where it is an actual custom element. The instance does extend HTML element. And so then that makes it entirely synchronous. And so then it's not on Stencil, the lazy load, but now it's on the tooling to do the correct thing. So if you, so we have 100 some components. If you only use one, the tooling will now correctly only pull in the one that you use. Whereas in the past, that was the challenge. So I'm excited about that. I think once we get that out, we can definitely migrate Vue and React to use this build. And it should have some improvements in performance. But that's that. And I don't actually think it's a breaking change for the most part, but because it is a whole new package, I think we can get that into V6. So I'm excited about that too. Any questions about V6 at all?
Just so you know, I'm working on a bunch of Tailwind support for Ionic.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, you should yeah, ping us. I'd love to find out more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I figured out a way to, it's really fantastic because it's just so easy to make classes that implement the variables, so, and then also made a Tailwind plugin so I can just, I'll type in a chat so I can do stuff like, I can do a class like text small, oops, don't spell check. Keep spell checking. Stuff like this. So I actually created a plugin that lets you target platforms just by adding a prefix to the class name.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, we'll have to definitely catch up on that. I'd love to find out more. I think Tailwind's great. And another thing that, I'll briefly hit on it a little bit later, but with Capacitor, we want to make sure that Capacitor and Ionic work great, but really Capacitor isn't an Ionic thing at all. It can work with Tailwind, it can work with Angular material. We really don't care. And so, yeah, the more the merrier of getting, other UI libraries working great with Capacitor. I'd love to work with you or anybody on that too. That's cool.
Yeah, it was, I'm just using it as is stock with Ionic, and it's working great.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, we'll have to catch up on that.
Yeah, it's a great marriage, actually.
Yeah, cool. Okay, and was that the next slide? Yeah, and so another thing that we're going to be working on pretty soon here is isomer animations. I think we've talked about it a little bit in the past. Really, it's nothing new. It's the same animation library that we've had since Ionic 2, and actually Liam did a lot of huge improvements to it using more native web animations and since the V4 implementation of it. But what we're going to do is, because it's useful, because it is pretty robust, it's been widely tested for years now, we're going to pull that out of Ionic and allow it to be a basic utility functions that anyone can use for any DOM element. It's not just an Ionic thing. Ionic would certainly import it and use it itself, but we thought it's a cool project. We put a lot of work into it. I think there's no reason why it can't be a separate project that people could use in anything outside of Ionic. So we'll be releasing that. Actually, I think it already is released, but we haven't built any docs for it yet. And so we'll be documenting that and making it a dependency of Ionic. Am I missing anything, Liam?
That's it.
Cool. And then the other thing is right now, Corey's working away on the ionicframework.com site refresh. So right now, if you go to ionicframework.com, it's both our docs for the UI library and also a lot about our company, and a lot of the services and things that we provide as a company. So what we're going to be doing kind of this next overhaul of the doc site is really focus on just the UI library's documentation, just that. And then a lot of the company information is going to move to ionic.io. So I'm excited about that because that really, helps us simplify our docs in general, make it a lot easier to navigate, find things, stuff like that. And not, I know I get overwhelmed when I go to the homepage and try to find the docs page. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Corey's been been working away. And also another part of it is that actually where this all started is that we wanted to have kind of a storybook type of little mini apps for each of the components so that you could toy around with like ion button, toggle some different settings, see how the color change, how the rounded corners change, things like that. So that's also part of the refactoring. And then after that, the next phase after that is to add a lot more interactive examples, either using StackBits or Code Sandbox or something of that nature, where you can have full-fledged apps that we can put into the documentation too. So expect more on that over the next couple of weeks.
Adam, how would one, do you have any tips for how one would get started on contributing to the docs?
Yes, actually, right now we have them all, they're all basically markdown files. There's certainly links at every single page that you can contribute. They're pretty easy for us to review and merge. So if we're missing something, which we'll say right now we absolutely are, please feel free to submit a PR just by clicking one of those edit docs links, and we'll certainly improve those. I think that's another big part of that kind of this refactoring, is that it was first built for Angular. We tacked on React, and kind of this round, now that we have Vue, we want to make sure that it's easy to go, to document any of the components, but then also understand the differences of the different frameworks. So that's also part of what Corey's working on, is to making sure that the components are better at focusing on each of the frameworks too. So, and I think once we start getting into a dev build up, we'll probably start showing that off and see if we can get some more help. We can post out there, see if we can get more help on our dev builds if there's anything we're missing. Corey, is there anything I'm missing?
Nothing I can think of.
Cool. Okay, any questions at all? And so lastly, this is a Ionic meetup, but I wanted to go just a little bit about Capacitor, talk about what we're doing. One thing that's kind of a blend between Capacitor and Ionic is a project we're calling Capacitor Elements. Where I see this going is that it's not necessarily just an Ionic thing, but rather if you're using Capacitor and React Material UI or Angular Material or Framework 7, you name it, and you want to be able to, in Capacitor, when it's a native app, actually open up a real toaster, a real alert, a real action sheet, things like that, it will be using the native APIs to pull those up. But at the same time, if you want that same application to have an action sheet or alert pull up inside of your PWA version of it, you shouldn't have to write a lot of code to get around that. So the plan is that basically using Capacitor Elements, you'd be able to use the native app implementations when you're on native, and then when you're not on native, it's going to use the Ionic implementation, which actually, because it's an individual build, because it's basically framework independent, it doesn't have to be an Ionic app to do that. So again, you can have jQuery mobile for all we know, and if you use this Capacitor API, it would open up an Ionic action sheet. And so it's not really based on writing templates, but more as a API that you'd import. So that's something we'll be working on over the next couple of months. And basically, I want to make sure that Capacitor is easy to use with any UI library, not just Ionic, on PWAs too. And then also, we're making a lot of progress on Capacitor 3. So really, it's a lot of improvements to the plugin system. Right now, the way that plugins are imported could be improved. So we want to make sure we do a lot of those updates. It is a different shaping of how they're imported, but really once you see how they're imported, it's no different than how you import any module. That was the big difference, is like right now, Capacitor 2 plugin kind of is a little weird how it uses types and how you have to export it as a const. So basically we're making it normal, is the way I see it. But also the old way, Capacitor 2, Capacitor 1 should continue to work just with deprecation warnings. There are a few breaking changes, but we've really done our best to try to make sure there are very few. And again, a lot of the old ways will continue to work, but deprecation warning is saying that we're going to remove this in V4. So we'll have plenty of time to update it. The config is now updated where it can be more of dynamic, where it can be actually either JavaScript or a TypeScript file with typed information. And so because it's dynamic, that allows us to have the different environments of dev, prod, and things like that. The other big thing that we want to get into the core of Stencil was to allow for embedding Capacitor apps inside of an existing app. So imagine you have a very large company-wide native application that many different teams work on, but you wanted to build a small web app to go inside of this big company app. We want to make sure that Capacitor can have its own instance and that it's not having to be the entire wrapper, but just can be embedded inside of it. So that's a huge internal improvement that we're doing to allow for that. Because right now it's kind of always assuming that Capacitor is the one true thing. Now it can be kind of embedded with other things. Also, on Android, all the plugins can be registered automatically, which is a big win. That I think Android was a little bit different than what iOS had to do. So Den and the team made a lot of improvements there, and we're hoping to get out kind of the remaining alphas this week. We're really confident with what we have and how the API is shaped. So we get the last alphas out this week, and then we'll start talking about a lot more with betas and get more people to help out with any testings and things out there. And the other part that I missed was the other big change is that right now there's, I don't know, 20 some official plugins. So like haptics and device and things like that are all built into the core of Stencil Core. There's pros and cons to that. The pro is that, it's a one-stop shop for all the kind of the basics that you need. The downsides to that is that if your app's not using those 20 plugins, they're still getting put into the app. And there's a scenario where there might be some problem with something that you're not even using. And so we wanted to kind of be more minimalistic of trying to only include what you're using. And so to do that, we wanted to break out the plugins into their own packages so that you can import only what you're using. So the only change there is like if you are using device or I don't know, haptics, things like that, then you would just, with Capacitor 3, you would have to import that as a normal package, but that's about the only big difference.
Adam, quickly, someone asked a question in the chat, but I figured we'll bring it to attention.
Sure.
With Capacitor 3, there's some changes to the CLI to support doing builds and potentially deploying via the command line. Is that right?
I actually can't answer that. I believe so, but I don't know what the latest is on that. I would say that we also have a Capacitor group and Slack that you can definitely get more information on that. So sorry, I don't smart enough to answer like where we are on that. I know that's something we've been kicking around, we've been working on, but I don't know where it's actually landed at the moment.
Okay, so hopefully that answers your question in the chat. I know we've talked about it a few times between a few different people. Currently, we're just not sure where it stands. We should have all the pieces to do it, but we'll get a better answer soon.
Yeah, so if you join the Capacitor Slack group, that'd be a great question to ask and get more information. And the team can definitely help you out there. Cool. Were there any other questions?
Yes. How do we get into the Capacitor Ionic Slack to follow up on that? It might actually be better if you go to Capacitor. We have a discussions tab where you can post questions and kind of have more dedicated discussions around development topics. So if you have something that you want to bring up for that, I would say ask that there, and we can get in touch. But yeah, let us know if there's anything that you if there's anything in particular, ask us there.
You mean on the forum?
Well, no, there's a forum which you can also use, but there's also github.com/ionicteam/capacitor/
Oh yeah, no, GitHub. Yeah, discussions.
Yeah, there's the dedicated GitHub discussions. So yeah. I would use that first. I think most of the Capacitor folks are.
Yeah, I used it. Still waiting for some feedback.
Cool. Any other questions?
Yeah, well, I know this isn't Capacitor, but you guys really need to look at the native decorator. I mean, it just completely revolutionizes the whole way we write plugins. Because I can now, you can write as much code as you want in the TypeScript world, and then and have native stuff, mix and match with TypeScript and native.
Yeah, we'll definitely take a look at that.
Yeah, please take a
have you
look.
been working with Dan on that at all? And this is because you saw my updates that I did to the register plugin, right? Where
Yeah.
you can provide your own implementation, or you're basically always have an instance, whereas in the past it was kind of a magical instance.
Yeah. No, but this is more, the way it is now, it's kind of like you either have web code running or you have native code running, and you can't mix and match. I mean, you can, but calling capacitor.to native is really tough. So I basically created a decorator that takes care of all that for you, and it lets you, so basically you just turn on all the platforms and you can mix and match
TypeScript
and native code. And it also does stuff like it lets you call plugins by passing separate parameters the way you normally would in JavaScript. And if you're getting a single parameter back, you don't have to deconstruct an object. So
okay, so this is largely for a plugin author.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, definitely. I will try to. Are you in the Ionic friends Slack group?
No.
Or the capacitor one? Yeah, we should try to connect there. I'd be curious to find out more about that because I haven't looked at it yet.
Yeah, I put in something up in the discussion on GitHub.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, we've been pretty busy trying to get that.
I know. I know you guys are busy. I see how much you're doing. But this is really something big. I mean, it's
I'll reach out to you directly and get your email so that way we can add you to the to a little internal chat that we have. So be on the lookout for that.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks. I love it. Okay. Let's see. Oh, did you want to do a demo?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. So I have a bunch of plugins I'm going to be releasing. The first one I actually released a couple of days ago was a secure storage, which is kind of like a drop-in replacement for the existing storage plugin, but it uses, it's all secure. Uses keychain on iOS and uses the key store on Android, and on the web it uses Blowfish encryption. But that's not exciting to see. So the big thing is splash screen. So let me let me share my screen.
You able to switch that, Mike?
Make sure this is running.
I actually don't know if I can be able to.
Yeah, you just go to security and check allow users to share their screen. There we go. Okay, thank you. All right, let's see. Here we go. Okay, you see it?
Yep.
Okay. So what I did is, so I created a plugin that lets you create a splash screen from an image or from a launch screen or from a storyboard on iOS or from a layout on Android. And on iOS, if you can actually specify that you wanted to use the launch screen, and it automatically copies it. And so there's a seamless transition between the launch screen and your splash screen. And so that is a launch screen, and it just transitioned to, and I created hooks so that if you define a certain function or method in your native app delegate, it will call that and lets you do custom animation. So, so for example, so this is the there it is with no background. I can set the background. Let's say I set it to, I can set it to black. Now it's black. I can also add alpha. Are you guys ever going to fix the difference between alpha on iOS and Android? on iOS, it's RGBA. On Android, it's ARGB.
You're saying that's a capacitor needs to fix that?
Yeah, it's a capacitor fix. I submitted this as an issue. Anyway, so you know you can configure everything. One nice thing is in the config, anything less than 10 is considered as seconds. Anything greater than 10 or greater is considered milliseconds. So it's really, if you want to think in terms of seconds, you can. If you want to think in terms of millis, you can. You can mix and match them. And then I can say, okay, auto animate it. And
so,
all I did. And,
so is that like a transparent PNG that's going on top
actually,
of the web page?
it is a, yeah, it was actually, I imported it from an SVG into iOS. Yeah, it's a transparent PNG. So I can also say I want to use an image. So, and I can, I support all of the image display modes for the native platform. So start with fit, there's max. And let's say we want to instead move him to the top left. There he is. And, you know, you can set the background. Let's say we want it to be blue. Yeah. And what else? And then, I mean, just for legacy purposes, I support spinners. But because you can do an arbitrary storyboard now, it's not so important. I mean, because with a storyboard, you can place the spinner wherever you want and size it and color it. I mean, you can do that with this, but I think people want to use actual storyboards or layouts. On Android, it's a layout. So that's an actual, let's see, let me make this stay a little longer. So that's actually from an iOS storyboard. So yeah, so now people can do whatever. And oh, the other cool thing is on iOS, I was able to get this to work. I have there's an API where you just say like on resume, and you give it a, actually no, sorry, it's on, you call listen to app state, and you pass on suspend and on resume in an object, and in there you tell it what to do on suspend and on resume. So in iOS, I was able to get it work. So when I suspend, let me see, let me go back here. I think I'm actually showing the launch screen as it's suspending. And then as it comes back, I animate it.
Oh, that's cool.
So you get the kind of thing Twitter used to do. You know, so every time you resume, you can, if you want to, you can show your branded launch screen. But it's totally, and then all of these parameters, all of the options can be passed either as an option directly to the plugin call, or they can be in the config. And if it's not in the plugin call options, it then looks at the config. It falls back to the config.
This is really cool. So is this for the existing splash screen, or is this a new project?
This is, this works with current Ionic. Yeah, I mean, this is a plugin that's essentially kind of replacing. I mean, the idea is hopefully, I mean, that this will replace your existing splashing plugin.
Gotcha. Because yeah, we got that official one. I'm just wondering.
Yeah,
if this is like a PR to that.
Yeah, the idea is this will. I mean, hopefully, you would say, hey, let's replace the existing one, because the existing one just, you know, it's just images.
Well, this looks like it's got all sorts of cool options. So
yeah, you can do anything. I mean, basically anything you can do natively, you can do now with this. And,
yeah,
and it works equally well on iOS and Android.
Yeah, I'd be excited about, you know, if you're okay with it, merge this into the
official
one.
You know, and I mean, I'll be happy to Yeah, I mean, you could merge this into Ionic, into capacitor 2 now, because it runs currently. And then, yeah, if you want, I'll be happy to rework it for capacitor 3.
Yeah, we should definitely show Dan and the team this.
Yeah. And it, I mean, I made a bunch of kind of extensions to config. I mean, what's the state of config now? Is it fairly stable?
Yeah, I'd say so.
On capacitor 3, yeah. Because one thing I'd like to add is one thing I did. Let me share so you can see the code.
Yeah, really, we were just chatting that we think that this alpha is the last one, and I'm pretty confident with like the API that we have now that we can start shipping betas just for testing.
Right. What was I going to show you? Let's see. Is this it? And that's the demo. What was I talking about? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, the config. Yeah. So, oh yeah, actually I want to show you. Yeah, I'll show you how it's called. So one thing I did is, I think I'd like to, I hope you'll consider this for capacitor 3, is one thing I did is I extended the config so that if there's a platform specific option, you can either specify it. I could either go iOS spinner style like that, or you can have a sub object per platform. So basically, if the option is iOS image display mode, I look first for this, and if that's not there, then I look for an iOS sub object, and then the what's left after the platform prefix.
Sure.
Yeah. So that the nice thing about that is, I mean, that mirrors what you're doing already in your global config in some cases, and this makes it easier when you're doing config to to separate for each platform, clearly see for each platform what's what.
Yeah. No, that's nice. Yeah. We should definitely chat. We got a couple things to chat about.
Yeah. So would this be on Slack, or what do you want to do?
Yeah. I think we can probably easiest.
GitHub maybe.
Probably can get you in the capacitor. Are you in the capacitor Slack?
No.
Okay. Capacitor community Slack.
Yeah. Because we really don't use that one much except for just like core contributing stuff. Like if you have something like this project, it'd be probably easier to chat live.
Okay. Yeah. The other so I also have a biometric auth plugin that's totally done and supports all of the native features. So you have total control over all of the messages in the dialogues, and I also support fallback to so like both iOS and Android support fallback to like PIN or that kind of thing. And what else? Oh yeah, I've also got like a drop-in replacement for the console that gives more control, lets you customize the like it customizes the prefixes that appear. So let's see. It's going to show Xcode. Is this it? Yeah. Oh, that was the other one. See if it appears. Hey, do you guys know about this?
No.
This, I get this every time.
Nope.
Okay, I'll put it up on capacitor. Oh, this isn't the one. Oh, I shared the wrong one. Sorry, this is turning into a capacitor show here.
That's fine.
Yeah. Let's see. So yeah, see this here. So I created a console plugin that lets you, you know, that uses, you have a custom little thing here, and you can customize this and config, and you can specify this, and I also have log levels. So you
Cool.
can, yeah.
So that would be an improvement to our existing.
Yeah, it would be an improvement
console?
to the existing one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And it would actually even work on the web as well.
Yeah, I'll definitely say now that we're getting the alphas out and we have all the plugins broken out to be individual, I would say like we can start making the PRs to the new packages, not the core
Right.
one. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Okay. Sounds
Cool.
good.
Yeah, and I'll try to set something up with us and Dan and the team to go over a lot of this in detail.
Great. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it.
Let me just show you. I mean, if you're willing, let me just show you real quick. We got to show you. I have to show you what native actually looks like. This native decorator. Let me get the project up. Oh, secure storage. Here we go. All right.
And so this is the plugin author's TypeScript
Yes,
file.
this is, yeah. So this is basically, so you just import native like this. And can you see the screen? Should I make it bigger?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay. So, you know, so if you notice, so to make a method native, all you do is add this decorator. And what that's doing under the hood is calling capacitor.toNative. But the really cool thing is, so I can actually have private, make the native API private if I want. And so, you know, my user code is calling these actual TypeScript methods, which then delegate to another method, which is declared native. So on the web, it's running this code, but native, it goes to the native code. And you'll notice that, so one of the things, a couple of things it does. One is it marshals you'll notice here that I'm actually calling with separate parameters. I don't have to create an object. So what the native decorator does is it actually converts under the hood. It's converting the function to a string and parsing the parameter names. And then, so it marshals, so it creates the object that's getting passed. So what the plugin gets is prefix key and the value and data, you know, and the value as an object.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, we should definitely dig into that further. I'd be curious to see the.
Yeah, and then on return, if the object it gets back from the plugin has a single key, I unwrap that from the object and return the bare value. So that lets you return just a plain bare string rather than an object with a string.
Gotcha.
With a key, but yeah. So yeah, it's just, I mean, and now I actually keep state in the plugin in the JavaScript object, even in native.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's like totally changes the whole way you think about writing plugins, and it lets you totally focus your plugin code on just what needs to be on natively, you know, without repeating. Because as it is now, let's say you're maintaining state, you've got to duplicate all that code across Android and iOS and the web, and it's like now you don't have to do that. So
yeah, cool. Yeah, let's set something up and talk about it more.
Okay.
Awesome. Is there anything else from anyone? Well, good. I think hopefully this was useful to everyone else. We'll try to schedule the next one, probably certainly not over the holidays, but probably early February or something like that. So thanks everyone. Thanks for attending, and we'll be posting the video and the notes later. Thanks.
Thanks for all your great work.
Yeah, thank you.